On the 30th of July, 1997, a ski instructor named Stuart Diver would be tucked up in bed with his wife Sally in the Brindabella Ski Resort, Snowy Mountains, New South Wales, Australia. At around 11:30 p.m, a loud cracking sound could be heard, rendering the cold mountain air. This would be followed by a loud whoosh, and then the world would become silent and dark. I'm Andrea.M, and this is Disasters Down Under. And before we dig further into today's case, if you enjoy unsolved cases, strange disappearances, disasters, real crime, and a little of the paranormal thrown in for good measure, then you've found just the channel for you, because that's mainly what we do here. And if that interests you, please also do me the favour of jumping repeatedly on the like button, wear out the subscribe button, and feel free to add your thoughts on today's disaster in the comments section below and share the love with your friends. It's subscribers like you good folk who allow me to continue to grow my channel here on YouTube and continue to make content for you guys just like this. With all that out of the way, and I hope everybody's had a lovely weekend and is feeling well, let's begin. Today's location, as I mentioned in the opener, is the picturesque ski town of Thredbo in New South Wales. Thredbo is a village and ski resort in the Snowy Mountains. It's situated in a part of the Snowy Monaro Regional Council and has been operated by Event and Hospitality since around 1987. It is approximately 500 kilometres, which is 310 miles south of Sydney, accessible by the Alpine Way via Cooma, Berriedale and Jindabyne. The village is built in the valley of the Thredbo River, and it's also known as the Crackenback River, at the foot of the Ram's Head Range. The town has approximately 4,150 beds, but a permanent population of approximately only around 477 people live there during the summer. When the mountain is fully covered by snow, Thredbo has the longest ski runs in Australia, attracting approximately 700,000 winter visitors annually. And in the summer, Thredbo is a hiking and summer sport destination, offering rock climbing and abseiling, fishing, cross-country cycling, downhill MTB riding, and hosts a blues music festival and gets approximately 300,000 summer visitors. But it's in the middle of the year in June, when ski season officially begins and runs through until October, that the resort town really comes alive. And unfortunately, it was right in the middle of ski season when the tragic events of today's story take place. So as we mentioned in the opener, at 11:30 p.m, everybody in the small ski town of Thredbo was tucked up in their beds when on Wednesday, the 30th of July 1997, a landslide destroyed the Bimbadeen and Corinna lodges at the Thredbo Alpine Village. Thousands of tons of liquefied earth and debris slid down the slope above the town. The 4-storey Corinna Lodge, owned by the Brindabella Ski Club, was torn in two. The landslide destroyed the support for the Alpine Way Road, which then also collapsed and sheared the western half of Corinna from its foundations. The detached structure would then slide downhill and cross Bowbuck Lane, before colliding with Bimbadeen Ski Lodge at high speed, destroying both. The landslide and the debris continued downhill to hit the Bimbadeen Staff Lodge, which also collapsed. Witnesses reported hearing a whoosh of air, a crack, and a sound like a freight train rushing down the hill. John Cameron, who was a member of the Brindabella Ski Club, who was actually alone in Corinna along with 17 residents in Bimbadeen, All lost their lives. Within 10 to 20 minutes of the landslide, New South Wales Fire Brigade's Communications Centre at Wollongong received emergency calls from the lodge at Thredbo. The local fire brigade responded to reports of a small explosion in the village. The first report to come through said that 100 people had thought to be trapped. Police arrived at 12:30am and evacuated the area. A regional disaster was declared, with Goulburn established as the Disaster Coordination Centre for the region. With Sydney also notified, medical staff were sent from nearby areas Cooma to Thredbo and also from Canberra to Jindabyne, which was a point for triage. 4 specialists were flown from St George Hospital in Sydney to Thredbo. By 2:30am, there were 100 professional services on the scene, and many volunteers from the Volunteer Rescue Association, the VRA of New South Wales, the State Emergency Service, SES, of New South Wales, and the Australian Red Cross and other rescue organisations. So that was a pretty quick response for something that was happening in the middle of the night. Moving into Thursday the 31st of July, SES volunteers and firemen assist at the Thredbo debris slope. At 7:30am, a forward medical command post was established, set up in a lodge located 50 metres or 164 feet from the site of the disaster. Inspector Rory O'Driscoll of the New South Wales Police arrived at 8:15am. At 10am, geophysicists who had been flown to the area from Sydney declared that the site was safe enough to begin an excavation of the top layers. However, it was still very unstable, with now exposed underground stream flowing through the debris at a rate of 6,120 litres per hour. At 10:30am, a medical team inspected the disaster site. Many of the rescue workers themselves required treatment of minor injuries, and the medical team realised that they had to prepare to treat exhaustion and hypothermia amongst the workers. The first body was found at 4:20pm and pulled out at 8:50pm. At 6:30pm, a second specialist medical team arrived from the Royal North Shore Hospital. The State Emergency Service rotated amongst 1,350 rescue workers, with about 250 on the site at any one time. They worked in shifts of 2 hours, followed by 4 hours rest. As they worked, attempts were made to reinforce the area to prevent further landslides. The slope of the hillside, which ranged from 22 to 40 degrees, and the sub-zero Celsius temperatures made rescue efforts difficult. By midnight, 24 hours after the landslide had occurred, only the first body had been discovered. During the night, the temperature at Thredbo would drop to minus 14 degrees Celsius, which is 7 degrees Fahrenheit. And this brings us to Friday, the 1st of August, and 1 more body was discovered in the early morning and 2 more later during the day. However, these bodies could not be retrieved at the time due to the instability of the rocks. A large slab of concrete, which had been part of the Bimbadeen car park, also made rescue efforts difficult. At 3pm, doctors met the relatives of the missing. During the day, several environmental issues were identified, such as water and sewerage being cut off from the site and some diesel fuel seeping into Thredbo Creek. Rescue workers announced on Friday that there was little hope of finding any survivors. They had not completely given up hope, but Assistant Police Commissioner Ken Moroney told reporters, "I think at this stage, chances are quite remote." At this time, there were no signs of life from the fibre optic cameras or the thermal imaging. But they would be wrong. There was still one man, still alive, underneath the tons of dirt, debris and snow. Ski instructor, Stuart Diver, was still alive. At 5:37am on August 2nd, digging finished and rescue workers dropped sound equipment into a hole they had been digging, as was the standard procedure. This time, they detected some movement from under the concrete slab. 5 minutes later, rescue expert firefighter Steve Hurst, who used monitoring equipment to confirm the movement, yelled out, Rescue team working overhead. Can anyone hear me? To which a voice called back, I can hear you. When asked if he had sustained any injuries, the voice replied, no, but my feet are bloody cold. He was identified as 27-year-old ski instructor Stuart Diver. A device called a trapped person locator was lowered down, and it had a microphone and speaker so that the rescuers could maintain contact with Diver. A pipe was also passed down the gap to provide warmer air, which should increase his low body temperature. Another tube was put down which carried fluids from which he could have 2 sips every 20 minutes. Hurst explained to the press that Diver said he was uninjured but was just extremely cold. Police Superintendent Charlie Sanderson explained the difficulty of extracting Diver because they could not risk the concrete slab falling on top of him. His position was 2 metres below the surface, beneath 3 concrete slabs, and if you look at the diagram I'm going to pop in here, you'll see where he was. He was lying in water and he was only wearing a pair of underpants, and due to the risk of the overlying concrete crushing Diver, rescuers began digging a tunnel 16 metres or 52 feet long from the eastern side of the slope. 5 hours later, rescuers had removed enough of the rubble for them to be able to actually reach through and touch Stuart where he lay. Paul Featherston was a paramedic who kept talking to Diver for 11 hours straight until he was freed, and the site had to be evacuated every time the rubble would shift during the rescue efforts. Featherston would stay below ground to keep Diver talking and to distract him. Diver was pulled from the wreckage later in the evening at around 5:10 p.m. His feet were frostbitten and he was transported to Canberra Hospital for his recovery. His first words as he breathed the pure mountain air was, "That sky is fantastic." He was trapped for 65 hours in a small space between 2 concrete slabs, unfortunately beside the body of his wife Sally. Sally was a reservations manager at the hotel, and she had died by drowning as a concrete beam had pinned her in a depression and that had filled with water overnight, and she drowned. The rescue effort continued after Diver had been found, now that rescue workers had hoped that there would be more survivors. However, they did not find any, and the last body was recovered on the following Thursday, the 7th of August. According to a diary that a then Australian Federal Police officer kept, during the rescue, the snow and rain only started after the final body was recovered. So what caused this terrible tragedy in the first place? And wow, isn't that crazy that they were there for like a week, excavating, getting Stuart out, keeping his spirits up, trying to find other survivors, and then it starts to rain and snow the minute the last body is removed. That's kind of freaky when you think about it. So that brings us to the coroner's report that was released on the 29th of June in the year 2000. It said the landslide was caused by water from heavy rain, melting snow and a leaking water main. The landslide hit an eastern wing of one of the lodges first, which caused the nearby land to collapse onto the lodges below. The coroner also noted that there had been landslides prior to July 1997 and that these prior landslides should have warranted action from the relevant authorities. So here we go again. It's like we explored when we explored the Granville train disaster. It was the negligence of the authorities that led to that disaster as well. And also, as we have sort of explored before with these cases, there's usually 3 contributing factors to these kinds of disasters. So you have to think it was the negligence of the council that weren't keeping an eye on these things and keeping track of how many landslides there'd been. There was a broken water main that had not been fixed, and then that was just the weather that contributed with the melting snow and the heavy rain and all of that liquid going into unstable soil. Perfect recipe for a landslide. So I just find that really interesting when I'm exploring these disasters, and I have watched a lot of disaster documentaries myself, as it has always interested me in how these things happen. And I think there's one show, I believe it's called Anatomy of a Disaster or something like that, but they always say there is always, nearly always, 3 contributing factors. And that's what was at play here as well. Another of the coroner's recommendations was that an independent body be established to assess the National Parks and Wildlife Service's ability to maintain roads within its national parks. New South Wales Environment Minister Bob Debus accepted this suggestion and addressed the New South Wales Parliament with his plan to do so. After the landslide, the New South Wales Fire Brigade would then expand its urban search and rescue division. In 1998, 3 terraces with gabions and reinforced fill were constructed on the site, and the Alpine Way was rebuilt with upslope retaining walls. The site, along with a section of the Alpine Way, is now monitored with 25 inclinometers to detect slope movement and 12 piezometers to keep track of water flow in the soil. Brindabella Ski Club opened its new lodge on the 5th of June 2004. As of December 2004, the state government of New South Wales spent $40 million in an out-of-court settlement with 91 businesses and individuals after the incident. On December 2nd, 2004, the Supreme Court judgment blamed the leaking water main pipe and the Alpine Way, which was built on a road full of debris, as the cause of the disaster. Soil creep had caused the main to fracture, which had saturated that already unstable slope that supported the road above Carinya Lodge. This verdict allowed the unsettled civil case of Bernard Joseph and Tricia Hecker to go forward. The Alpine Way had originally been built as a temporary construction across the road by the Snowy Mountains Hydroelectric Authority during the 1950s. And that was to access the Murray 1 and the Murray 2 hydroelectric power stations constructed as part of the Snowy Mountains scheme. Once the power stations were completed, the authority upgraded the road with fill and planted vegetation on the downhill hillside. They transferred ownership to what was then called the State Park and is now Kosciuszko National Park, managed by the National Parks and Wildlife Service, and the National Parks and Wildlife Service had inadequate funds to maintain many of the park roads, especially those that were not designated for the purpose to which they were later put, which was transportation in and out of the Thredbo resort. Following the disaster, responsibility for the Alpine Way and Kosciuszko Road was handed to the Roads and Traffic Authority. A memorial service was held in 2007 to mark the 10th anniversary of the events, which included a flare run down the mountain after sunset. Another memorial was conducted on the 20th anniversary in 2017, and a fact-based made-for-TV drama, Heroes Mountain, was released in 2002, with Craig McLachlan starring as Stuart Diver, and Tom Long and Anthony Hayes were also co-starring. And what became of our hero, Stuart? After the incident, Diver wrote a biography, Survival, with journalist Simon Buda, detailing his struggles with the experience of the disaster and the aftermath. Diver's, as we just explored, experiences were made into the movie Heroes Mountain, and Stuart has gone on to earn a Bachelor of Applied Science degree as a Level 3 ski instructor, and in 2012 he became the operations manager of the Thredbo ski resort. And after his wife Sally tragically passed away in the Thredbo landslide, Stuart would go on to find love again with his second wife, Rosanna Cosatini, and the couple would go on to have a daughter named Alessia. Stuart owns a house above the disaster site where he lived with his wife, Rosanna and Alessia. However, Rosanna would also tragically and sadly pass away from breast cancer on the 21st of March in 2015. Stuart, however, is still living in Thredbo with his beautiful daughter and has an active role in the Salvation Army and is one of the most well-known public faces of the charity. And he also has his family by his side of his brother Ewan, his mother Annette, and his father Steve. And that brings us to the conclusion of the Thredbo landslide and the bravery and the heart of Stuart Diver and his rescuers. This was just another event that I remember being absolutely glued to and being desperate for news that they had actually freed Stuart Diver. I also remember just feeling so sad about what happened to his wife and the other people killed in the landslide. So it is only right that we remember them here. Di Ainsworth, John Cameron, Barry Decker, Sally Diver, Diane Hoffman, Werner Jecklin, Oscar Lunn, Andrew MacArthur, Steve Moss, Wendy O'Donoghue, Mary Phillips, Ano Seabrams, Mark Sodergren, Min Sodergren, Stephen Urasevic, Cole Warren, David Watson, and Tony Weaver. My thoughts and prayers still go out to all of those who are affected by and lost loved ones in this terrible tragedy. And that's about it for today's Disaster Down Under. As always, I'd love to hear any of your thoughts or memories you might have of the landslide. Wow, I didn't think I was going to get so emotional about this, but actually doing this video and talking all about it, it has brought it all flooding back. And it wasn't just Stuart that we were all pulling for when they were trying to get him out. It was the hope that Sally was also still alive. And when you actually watched the news reports and you heard how they spoke of Sally and the other people who had perished in this tragedy, it just really gets you in the feels and gets you in the heart. And you just, it's just another one of these awful things that you hope didn't really happen, that you're going to wake up the next day and it was all going to be a dream. So, yeah, I wasn't actually expecting to get the feels happening because it did happen so long ago. But it just goes to show that you never forget the way you felt when you were watching this on the TV and how you were just hoping so much that they would find people still alive. I take a deep breath after that. But yeah, it's wonderful that Stuart did go on to find love again, and even though his second wife has also passed away, that's two beautiful women that he got to spend some of his life with, and he now has his beautiful daughter, so that is wonderful. And I'm just really happy to hear that he is doing so well in his life after this tragedy. So that's going to do it for today. And thank you all so much for watching again. Stay safe and much love. And I'll see you all again soon. And I do apologise if I sound a little sick today. I have a horrible sinus infection, but I still wanted to make this video because it's important to me and it's important for me to get my content out for you guys. And thank you so much to everybody who has already subscribed to this channel. And if you have been watching and you haven't subscribed yet, I would like to ask you, please, would you just take 5 minutes to push the subscribe button and hit the bell so you don't miss any of my videos, because I'm trying to get my channel to 1,000 subscribers so that I can become a part of the partnership program here on YouTube, and it is all you lovely people who can help me do that. So if you would please help me do that, I would be so grateful and so appreciative. Stay tuned. We have another bizarre Ozfiles coming up in a couple of days, and it's as per a subscriber request, so stay tuned for that. We have more real crime down under, we have more missing down under, and of course more disasters down under, and our paranormal videos will be starting up again next month. So you don't want to miss any of it, so make sure you're subscribed and the bell button has been rung. And I love you all so much from the bottom of my heart. Thank you so much for watching again, and I'll see you all soon.